This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America for this Thursday morning. I'm Seth Merrill. Thanks for joining me. A little later on the show, John DeSilva from RacingWithBruno.com. We'll talk a little bit of New York racing with him for this Thursday afternoon. Maybe also look out at the Long Island, the stakes race on Saturday down at Aqueduct. But we'll also get some of his thoughts from the Breeders' Cup, as we've been doing with all the guests this week. Coming up past the bottom of the hour, Dave Rodman from Laurel Park, and Dave will give us some thoughts on Laurel for this afternoon. We'll also get some of his Breeders' Cup thoughts, and we will tip our cap to Dave after giving us some very, very good information last Thursday during his visit, so stay tuned for that as well. News over the past 24 hours or so came out that P.J. Campo has been named the Vice President of Racing for the Stronach Group. P.J. Campo, of course, formerly the Vice President and Director of Racing for NYRA. This probably not that unexpected, because when Christopher Kay came in, they said they were going to... Christopher Kay, who is now the head of NYRA and really has more of a background in hospitality than racing, and it was talked about bringing in a right-hand man that knew a little bit more about racing. Subsequently, within the past week or so, they brought in Martin Panza from Hollywood. Doesn't start for maybe another month or so, end of this month, I think. But Martin Panza, respected from Southern California, will be the Vice President of Racing Operations, I believe will be his title. And so I'm assuming maybe there was not room enough for both of these guys, or at least P.J. Campo decided he would look for sunnier horizons and moved on. But P.J. Campo, now Vice President of Racing for the Stronach Group, he will be based at Gulfstream Park, will assist Tim Ritvo down at Gulfstream, but will also oversee and help out with the Stronach properties: Gulfstream, Santa Anita, Laurel, Pimlico, Golden Gate, and Portland Meadows. P.J. Campo, again, formerly the Vice President and Director of Racing for NYRA, now Vice President of Racing for the Stronach Group. Noted earlier on the Handicappers Report, sale yesterday at Keeneland November sale, Groupie Doll went through the ring. Groupie Doll, the repeat winner at the Breeders' Cup on Saturday. Groupie Doll draws an auction price of $3.1 million, purchased by Mandy Pope's Whisper Hill Farm. It was a big day down at Keeneland as the auction results from around the country continue to impress. The revenue for Wednesday's session down at Keeneland up 31%. Average sale price rose 11%. The median rose 10%. So clearly the folks down at Keeneland very happy with the results on Wednesday. And again, among those results was Groupie Doll. It's noted in the article in the Racing Forum that Groupie Doll arrived on the Keeneland sales grounds on Monday. The buzz continued to progress steadily in the hour preceding Groupie Doll's entry into the ring on Wednesday afternoon. And then when it came time for Groupie Doll to head to the walking ring, it said that Buff Bradley, the exercise rider, the groom, the assistant, all bid emotional farewells to Groupie Doll, hugging her, patting her, and then they sent her into the ring. Bradley says, I kind of had to hold myself together, emotional, losing what had been a very, very solid race mare for Buff Bradley and his dad, Fred, but goes into the ring on Wednesday and attracts $3.1 million. Early odds for the Kentucky Derby are out, and I have it linked on Equidaily today. Early odds, and actually some past performances for the 2-year-olds that are out there right now, with perhaps thoughts of the Triple Crown and the Kentucky Derby next year. You can link to that on Equidaily. Again, past performances for these 2-year-olds, as well as the chart with the early Kentucky Derby odds from Las Vegas. Give you an idea of some of the odds so far. And I'm just looking down. Looks like Honor Code right now is the favorite. Honor Code in the early Kentucky Derby odds from Vegas. Honor Code 10-1. Havana 20-1. The Breeders' Cup Juvenile winner, New Year's Day, 15-1. Mexicoma, a horse that we found kind of interesting going into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, 75-1. Strong Mandate, 30-1. Tapit Rich, the Baffert runner who had the buzz going into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Now he's second string in the Baffert barn behind New Year's Day. Again, New Year's Day comes out of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile win, 15-1 on the Kentucky Derby line. Tapit Rich, 20-1 after running up the track in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. And Ria Antonia, the winner of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile filly on the DQ, but subsequently his connections, his owner anyway, has kind of made some remarks about potentially thinking Kentucky Derby. That seems rather ambitious to me. But if you do think Ria Antonia could be interesting, the girl against the boys in the Kentucky Derby, you can get 300-1 on her out at Vegas, Kentucky Derby early odds. And again, there's probably a couple of hundred horses listed here. So if you want to check that out, the entire list, you can link to it on Equidaily. Article by Marty McGee in yesterday's Daily Racing Forum, still up obviously today as well. Talked to Ken Ramsey after having left the Breeders' Cup weekend a little bit disappointed. The title of the article, Ramsey's blanked at Breeders' Cup. Ken Ramsey quoted in the Marty McGee article as saying it was kind of what like Caesar said over there in Rome. Vini, vita, non vici. I came, I saw, I got my butt kicked. Ken Ramsey, philosophical about the tough weekend. Of his 6 horses, the best finish was the 3rd place finish by Bobby's Kitten. Now, to his credit, Ken Ramsey is then quoted as saying, if you're afraid to fail, you shouldn't be in the horse business. And that's the truth. That's the truth on the owner's side, and it's the truth on the bettor's side, because we all, a good day, we're stacking up against good batters in the Major League Baseball realm. If you're hitting about 333, you're knocking it out of the park, so you're losing more than you're winning. You just want to make sure that it's paying off when you're doing it. And for Ken Ramsey this year, it certainly has been. So Ken Ramsey philosophical a little bit about the way things went, but he said he had a great time out there, and they're still looking forward to potentially picking up some hardware at the Eclipse Awards. And I think he's probably, even with a rough 2 days at the Breeders' Cup, I think he's got a couple of Eclipse Awards sewn up, both owner and breeder. So we'll see how that shakes out coming out at the Eclipse Awards after the first of next year. Dale Romans, Marty McGee also talked to him and checked in to see where some of his horses may be headed coming out of the Breeders' Cup. Little Mike will remain in training, head to Florida this winter. Race still to be determined. Silver Max, who was 4th in the Breeders' Cup Mile, he'll be given some time off in Ocala and pointed to a spring campaign. Nice to see both of them coming back. And Sun's Out, Guns Out, the West Point horse, 2nd in the Breeders' Cup Marathon, might head to either the Hawthorne Gold Cup or the Clark at Churchill Downs. So Sun's Out, Guns Out, potentially back before the end of this season. Also notable, Point of Entry, retired. I was going to say it's a little surprising. What's surprising to me is they put in the time and effort to get this horse back for the Breeders' Cup. I suppose if you add the Breeders' Cup to the horse's resume, he becomes even more attractive heading to the breeding shed. So you can make the argument that was their attempt with, the long layoff and then coming back for only 1 start. That's what's a head scratcher for me. You put all that time and effort in getting him to come back, and you only make the 1 start. Now that noted, turf horse, what are really his options here before the breeding season starts next year? So To retire him now, I don't know whether they're really missing too much in the interim. You could make an argument that he could maybe make 1 or 2 starts and still make the Breeders' Cup. There are probably a couple of spots out there he could pick. Certainly nothing of the class and the level of the Breeders' Cup, though. So again, it seems like maybe they were just hoping to put a Breeders' Cup win on the resume before sending him to the breeding shed. That didn't happen. I thought he was an okay 4th given the layoff in the Breeders' Cup turf, but Point of Entry now announced to be retired, heading to Adena Springs in the retirement. Suffolk Downs, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. They have been chasing slots now for a while. Casinos were okayed up in Massachusetts, and the question mark was going to be, where will they be located? Well, there was a casino referendum on the ballot this past Tuesday up in the Suffolk Downs area, and it's a really interesting situation because Suffolk Downs, their physical acreage is located in 2 different voting jurisdictions. One voted down the casino, one gave the casino the okay. And so Suffolk Downs, it seems like the main plant and area is in the area, the acreage that got the thumbs down. But again, they still have acreage available where the voters said yes. So it's going to be interesting to see if on a technicality they can move in and pursue a casino. That will still play out. But Suffolk Downs, again, has been chasing a casino, and it was a split decision for them pretty much on Tuesday. Things now become a little more technical, and we'll keep our eyes there on the Boston area because Suffolk Downs has, with a lot of tracks over the past 10 years or so, casino money is a driving force and a real goal, and particularly up there with casinos getting the okay. If you're a racetrack left on the outside looking in, and now the casino money is drawing some of those gamblers, that's not going to be a good situation. So you want to be tied in with that. So we'll see what happens there and keep our fingers crossed for Suffolk Downs. Mucho Macho Man has returned to Gulfstream Park. Kathy Ritvo, first female to win the Classic. She said Mucho Macho Man get a few more days off to recuperate from his travels. Going to let him get settled in. She said everything looks great at this point. And she said we're both Florida breds now. He really likes this track. He trains very well over Gulfstream. So that's where he'll be situated right now. But she adds, going to Dubai for the World Cup is an option. And I definitely think there are chances he could run here at Gulfstream this winter. So we'll see how that shakes out. But potentially, Mucho Macho Man Breeders' Cup Classic winner could be headed to Dubai for the World Cup. Speaking of the casino potentially in the Boston area with Suffolk Downs, casinos were also on the ballot here in New York. New York voters overwhelmingly gave the thumbs up to casinos, a plan for 7 potential new casinos, mostly upstate. I think the long-term plan is things would potentially, one could be sited down in New York, the New York City area, but that's a little more farther out. The foreseeable future, 7 casinos in the upstate area. One would be located in our area. Where exactly, we don't know. Certainly Saratoga, the harness track up there, is going to be pursuing it, but it's not a done deal where it will go. So it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out. But also, not quite sure. I'm going to wait to hear from the racing industry and see what their take on it is. I'm not sure whether what the effect will be or whether it will have an effect on the racing industry. You would have to think, though, if you start to split up the gambling dollar, it will have some effect. But again, haven't seen really any direct response to Tuesday's vote in New York, giving the okay to casinos from the racing industry. We'll see how that shakes out over the next few weeks. Do want to head to the first commercial break. Taking a look at a couple of races. We'll talk about these while we watch them. Obviously, all week long, we've been focusing on the Breeders' Cup and watching replays of that, although we did watch the Melbourne Cup as well. But there were a couple of nice little 2-year-old races on Sunday at Aqueduct, both of the boys and the girls. A couple of horses that may be worth watching, and some horses back in the pack that may be worth watching going forward in both of those races. So I just wanted to pull up the stretch runs from those 2 2-year-old stakes at Aqueduct on Sunday. First up, we'll watch the stretch drive of the Nashua Grade 2 event, $250,000 purse. It's a one-turn mile. We're going to watch the number 12, Cairo Prince, get it done for Kieran McLaughlin. Cairo Prince, second career start is this win in the Nashua. Comes off of a maiden victory earlier this month, last month actually, October 6th. Down at Belmont, won by daylight that day in a short field of 5. Left from the outside 12 post, but certainly it was not a hindrance as Cairo Prince takes the lead around the turn and into the stretch. There will be a close here from Financial Mogul, the number 3 horse, to run an okay second. Noble Moon third. Financial Mogul debuted up at Saratoga for Rick Violet and Klaravich. Ran fourth in the career debut, subsequently won in the second career start. Tried the Futurity last time, did Financial Mogul. Ran fourth there. But this is one just seems like took him a couple of starts to break the maiden. And now in the second start at the Stakes Company, Financial Mogul showed maybe a little more punch. So Financial Mogul, I think, could be interesting to watch going forward. And Noble Moon, who ran third. That was only the second career start. So all three of the top finishers in the Nashua could be a little bit interesting to watch going forward. And again, we'll touch on just one more race here because I think this is a 2-year-old filly that could be interesting going forward into the 3-year-old season as we look at the Tempted. Again, this is for the 2-year-old fillies. Grade 3 event, $250,000 purse on Sunday down at Belmont, Sunday down at Aqueduct, going that one-turn mile. We're going to watch the number 5, Stop Shopping Maria, get it done for Todd Pletcher and Rapoli Stable. You see the Rapoli colors there on the rail. Stop Shopping Maria is going to win this one very, very easily as the 4-5 favorite. Stop Charging Maria won the career debut up at Saratoga pretty convincingly as the 1-2 favorite back in July. Subsequently came back in the Spinaway, was a pretty good second to Sweet Reason. Followed that up in the Fazette, running behind Artemis Agritera, and Sweet Reason running third that day. Wins the Tempted in very nice fashion. And as I say, I don't know whether we can look at Stop Charging Maria to be a leader of the 3-year-old filly division, but I think she certainly has the talent to make some noise. So some 2-year-old races this past weekend down at Aqueduct worth taking a look at. We didn't want those to get lost in the mix as we talked about Breeders' Cup all this week. All right, speaking of New York racing, we will get to that, talk about this afternoon in New York, maybe look out on the weekend as well. Also some Breeders' Cup thoughts coming up after this from John DeSilva. Stay tuned.
This is Steve Beck. Join me Tuesday through Saturday here on OTB TV for At the Races, my Sirius XM daily news magazine of the thoroughbred industry. Handicapping, interviews, analysis, everything you could want. 6 a.m. OTB TV.
The future of online betting is here, and only at the all-new CapitalOTBBet.com. With a newly designed and engineered internet wagering platform, enhanced video streaming, additional funding options, and 3 new individual wagering opportunities, CapitalOTBBet.com delivers a state-of-the-art wagering experience found nowhere else in horse racing. Combine that with our all-new mobile website. You have 2 of the most powerful, innovative, and advanced wagering platforms available today. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Hey, race fans, head down to the all-new Clubhouse Racebook and get in the game. With live horse racing on more than 250 flat-screen TVs, state-of-the-art wagering terminals, fantastic food and drinks, an amazing Vegas-style atmosphere with seating for nearly 900 of your closest friends. Conveniently located at 711 Central Avenue, right off Exit 5 of I-90 in Albany, the Clubhouse Racebook is the better choice.
I'm Anthony Mormino. Join me weekdays at 9 for the Handicappers Report. We'll handicap the top tracks across the country and help you prepare for the day in racing. That's the Handicappers Report, weekdays at 9, only on the OTB TV network.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. We were conversing during the commercial break with John DeSilva, racingwithbruno.com. Good morning, John.
Good morning. What's going on?
Not too much. Give us a little update because I handicapped Aqueduct on the Handicappers Report earlier, and we were wondering, the weather forecast looks like rain. Looked on the Aqueduct website, and at this point they're still on the turf. But what's it look like down there weather-wise?
Hey, we did have some rain earlier. It's not raining right now. We are scheduled for rain later. We're going to be in the mid-60s. What time the rain is going to arrive is anybody's guess, so I think they're trying to hold off making any decisions for as long as they can to at least prior to the pick six, where they had to make a decision one way or another.
All right. And, John, I read a little earlier during the news segment, P.J. Campo has been announced as Vice President of Racing at the Stronach Group. Is that a surprise?
Not a surprise, because when I was at Belmont towards the end of the meet, you know where the Campo family has all the trophies being shown and all that? That was gone.
Oh.
So when I saw that, I was wondering, why would they take the trophies out? Because they would never do that when we go to Aqueduct. So I had strange feelings something was going on. I just wasn't sure what it was.
Yeah, and I said earlier it wasn't a surprise to me because I think with Martin Panza coming in, maybe it wasn't kind of room for two sheriffs in town. Was kind of the feeling I
Especially,
got.
I think they both wanted the job.
Yeah.
And Panza got the job.
Yeah. So P.J. Campo now heading to the Stronach Group. Martin Panza. I said earlier, Panza comes in the end of this month?
Yes, he'll be here by the end of the month. I'll be very curious to see if he brings anybody along with him. I've heard some stories that he may bring one or two people with him to help him out, that he's comfortable with. And now it's going to be interesting because when you have a guy like Panza who's going to be second in charge, he's going to want some of his own people that he's comfortable with. And you have to wonder who he may want to move out, to help that transition, make it easier for him, because obviously with New York racing, we've had some good things, we've had some bad things, and sometimes you're more comfortable with the people you know that you could trust and would do the right thing. So I'm curious to see what Panza does here.
I will say this, from everything I read, he's very respected, so it's going to be interesting to see what he does with the move to New York.
I'm very curious, too, with PJ gone. I'm curious to see what he does about the racing secretary situation. Does he try to bring in somebody in-house, or what I suspect he may try bringing somebody from the outside? Because what I've been hearing, I think he agrees with a lot of the other people out there, is the condition book definitely needs a little shaping up.
Yeah, it will be fun to see what he does on the move in, and that, as we noted, comes at the end of this month. All right, John, we've been talking with all the guests. A little later on, we'll talk Aqueduct this afternoon, maybe look out at the Long Island on the weekend as well. But before we do that, all the guests this week, we've been getting some impressions from the Breeders' Cup. I got a few races that we haven't watched earlier this week that I'll pull up and talk a little bit about with you, specific races. But before we do that, just want to get some overall impressions from the Friday and Saturday out at Santa Anita.
Well, first off, let's give credit to Beholder. The race that she ran, I thought the race that she ran was going to be Royal Delta, and Royal Delta ran the race that Beholder did. Instead, it was opposite, but great ride by Stevens. She is the best 3-year-old filly in the country. I feel bad for Princess of Silmar's connections, because I think they are forced into this race by public pressure from people, which, hey, who are we to tell them how to spend their money? But then to race over a racetrack which they had no shot to win on, it was really a disservice to them.
I said this, though, earlier. I hope they don't kick themselves, because a couple of weeks ago, I was in the camp of a lot of people who said, if Princess of Silmar stays in the barn, she's got the 3-year-old filly Eclipse locked up. So I hope they don't kick themselves, because I changed completely around after watching Beholder win. I think even if Princess of Silmar had stayed in the barn, she still would have been up against it the way Beholder won on Friday as far as the 3-year-old filly Eclipse.
I agree. Beholder did what you're supposed to do, is go out there and win. Princess of Silmar did it against Royal Delta, but then Beholder went and did. And the thing about the way Beholder did it, she did it in a style a little different than what we expected, and won impressively. She is a true champion. And look at last year's Breeders' Cup. We had no juveniles run in the Kentucky Derby, and really none of them were major factors during the year. Capo Bastoni, and he's had enough. No, not really. Beholder won the juvenile fillies. Remember, that was without Lasix. And for her to come back and to do what she did this year, she is the real deal. And maybe the only we had a couple of Dreaming of Julia, but didn't last long. Executive Privilege didn't last long. But Beholder is really, and quite quick. Katie won a couple of races, but Beholder, she's definitely the champion. She definitely showed what she did last year. She improved this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Very impressive. I've said a bunch of times earlier this week, overall that race was disappointing for me because I was hoping for the big battle of those top three, but that doesn't take anything away from Beholder, who was very impressive. Also impressive on the weekend, and we're going to take a look. This is a race we haven't had a chance to take a look at so far, the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint on Saturday. We're going to watch the stretch run here. I just could not pull the trigger on Misdirection because I thought it was so fluky for her to come back off a long layoff 2 years in a row. But Mike Smith, again, one of the other stories of the weekend, gives this horse a very nice ride. She is obviously not just a horse for a course, but a horse for that peculiar and particular 6.5 furlong downhill course out at Santa Anita. As we watch the stretch run here, it will be number 12, Misdirection, getting up to repeat here in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. And as I say, very impressive to do it 2 years in a row off the long layoff.
Mike Pipey, very underrated trainer on the national scene. This man can train. And to do what he did with Misdirection, tremendous. I mean, she's usually on the close to the pace. He gets this horse to come from off pace. Yes, she loves the downhill, and it's like her second home. But to do this 2 years in a row, I mean, Renee Scott Zip, I mean, that poor mare, she's probably glad she's never going to see Misdirection again, you know, but let's give Pipey the credit. Let's give everybody connected with that horse credit. Jim Rome, you know, and unfortunately he said after the race, the only thing he hated is the business side because he knew the right thing to the horse was to sell. But when you get $2.7 million for her, that's not so bad.
Yeah, exactly. I can't cry too much for them, but certainly this was a very, very impressive performance as noted, so happy to get a chance to show that. Also, another race we haven't really taken a look at this week is the Breeders' Cup Sprint. We're going to watch number 9, Secret Circle, getting it done over number 12, Laugh Track. Secret Circle, interesting. I was talking probably 2 weeks prior to Jeremy Plonk, and we were talking a little bit about the sprint division and how wide open it is. And he said, you know, I'm going to take a little look at Secret Circle. And when he brought that horse up, I thought, you know what, that's kind of interesting. Had the promising 3-year-old season last year that was shortened. Go back to 2011, Secret Circle was the winner of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Sprint, the since discontinued. But Secret Circle, the comeback middle of October, was a nice optional claiming win. Bob Baffert gets the sprint win here with Secret Circle. Horses coming out of New York, of course, disappointing, particularly Justin Phillip. That's the direction I went in the race. Your thoughts on the sprint?
Well, Secret Circle owed me because I had a $25,000 pick 5 going with Schmooze. So when I saw those fractions, I thought there's no way this horse is going to last, and that horse lasted. Schmooze was flying at the end. So Secret Circle don't exactly see eye to eye. But coming into the race, I saw her, the comeback race, tremendous. The way he was working out, tremendous. And I'm just looking at this as this horse is going to win. I don't care. It's the second race off the layoff. This horse, to me, is that good, and I think this horse, if ready, is going to win. And again, changing of the running style. This horse was further off the pace than I think he's ever been in his lifetime. And to win like that, especially with that wide move, this horse probably is the best sprinter out there right now, even though with 2 starts. I would have no problem giving him the championship because, to me, just visually seeing what he does, how can I go with anybody else?
Yeah, the only other direction I think would be points off the bench, the ill-fated points off the bench. But it's a division that was crying out for somebody to step up, and it's just been in kind of disarray. Points off the bench, again, being fatally injured coming into this, was the probable favorite and really had the shot to take that stranglehold. So now it's going to be wide open, but with the weight a lot of voters do give to Breeders' Cup races, I wouldn't really have an argument with Secret Circle, just because I don't think there's anybody really out there who's taken control. And when we talk about Eclipse Awards, I'll be interested to get your thoughts on another race we're going to look at. What are the Eclipse implications here? You talked about last year, no horses coming out of the juvenile and heading to the Kentucky Derby. I'll be interested to see how that works out in 2014. We are going to watch the stretch run of this year's juvenile, Breeders' Cup Juvenile, New Year's Day for Bob Baffert. The other Baffert at 10-1 comes up the rail and gets it done over Havana and Strong Mandate, the New York contenders, who I thought were very interesting, but were hung very far outside in the 13 and 14 holes. But New Year's Day gets it done. They walked home in this race. So what are the Eclipse implications moving forward for the 2-year-old Eclipse? And B, who comes out of this and maybe has potential for the Kentucky Derby next year?
Well, I think for the Eclipse implications, I think New Year's Day is going to get it because the way I've looked at 2-year-old voting in the past, this is the race you really need more often than not, because when you're running these 2-year-old races coming up to this race, you don't know the quality. I mean, you may be winning, but you might be winning against Drek, and may not be that good. This is the only race where you're hoping that this is going to be the quality of the quality, and that going up against the best horse, and you show that you are the best. So it carries more weight than usual than I think in any other division. And to me, with this horse winning New Year's Day, I think he's the 2-year-old champion. Moving forward, I'll be very curious to see what Baffert does, because he does have a lot of 2-year-olds. He can go in so many different directions. I mean, look at Tapit Rich and all the trouble that horse had, but that was a second lifetime start. And who knows? And the one thing about Baffert, we know he's not afraid to ship. And he will go out there and find the right spots. He'll ship to Oaklawn. He'll ship to New Mexico. He'll ship wherever just to make sure he gets the point. And I think with a horse like New Year's Day, who did have a little issue and had missed a little time earlier this year, he's going to map out a nice, maybe 3-race in the plan to get him ready for the Kentucky Derby. But at least he knows what he's got with this horse right now. And this is a horse who, even though he is going to come back on Lasix, so I think will help him and everybody else, I think this horse does have a future to be a contender.
Can Honor Code throw his hat in the ring with a win in the Remsen?
I don't think so.
No?
I mean, again, the Breeders' Cup has so much weight. And even though some people may look at what happened last year with the Juvenile, with nobody coming forward, you can't penalize a horse like New Year's Day for what happened last year. And Honor Code, nice and everything else, and Shug is probably doing the right thing by not putting him into that situation. In the end, I still think that New Year's Day is going to get it.
And what are your thoughts about the 3-year-old male Eclipse? And I bring it up because of the retirement of Orb. I thought Orb stood still a chance if he moved forward and had won the Cigar Mile. So it was a little bit of a head-scratcher that they retired the horse, with Shug saying, hey, he's in perfectly good health and looks great and everything. I kind of question that because, as I say, I think they would have been in the Eclipse conversation with a potential win in the Cigar Mile. But what are your thoughts on the 3-year-old Eclipse?
I have a feeling after Will Take Charge did what he did, they probably realized even if they won the Cigar, it would have been very difficult for them to win the 3-year-old because people like rewarding horses who go longer. I mean, this is a horse who's been a warrior. Will Take Charge. He may not have been great during the Triple Crown races, but the way he's run, especially recently, it's very difficult to go by what he's done the second half of the season. Because people have to remember, this is an Eclipse for the whole season, not for a couple of months. And Orb, unfortunately, hasn't been the most consistent, while Will Take Charge has taken charge of what he's done.
Yeah, and Jeremy Plonk yesterday made the good point that Will Take Charge is one of the things we discount. He has certainly filled out and come into his own since late summer. But he also won the Rebel earlier this year. It's a grade 2, but he won it over Oxbow, and so that kind of adds a little intrigue as well. But I still thought Orb would be interesting. You throw the Kentucky Derby into the mix, the Florida Derby. So for me, it was a little bit of a head scratcher, the retirement, but you may be right. Maybe they were reading the tea leaves. All right, John, let's shift our attention, take a look now at this afternoon at Aqueduct. Which races are you going to take a look at?
We're going to look at the late pick 3 today.
Perfect.
And it is like the overcast. But who knows what time we can see with rain. So I would definitely watch the weather reports and watch the boards and see what happens here. But we're going to go into a race number 7, and the first horse we're going to be looking at is going to be Win for Kitten. I mean, yes, it's a kitten horse on the grass, and everything else. And Gary Contessa's horse did run second 2 starts back at Delaware against Option Claimers, going a mile 16, which is a little bit like the Aqueduct turf course, 2 turns. It's 1 mile here. They're going 2 turns here. And I just think this is a horse who's probably didn't like, what happened last time out. We just ran the flat race. But I think today coming into the starter optional claimer, I think a little bit of class relief. I think that horse gets the job done today.
Yeah, I at the top of the page, I have written tough race. I could have made a case for a bunch of these. I wound up going with Wicca-Pecco, but yours was one of the, that I had some check marks next to, so I find that one a little bit dangerous.
Did you see the changes at Aqueduct? With the lake being gone and some of the bushes being gone, and even the main tote board that showed the pools being gone?
No, I haven't really noticed. I've watched the racing, but I haven't really noticed.
Yeah, the big tote board where you see all the Wednesday show pools are gone. That's not back. And the lake that's by the far turn is gone, along with a lot of bushes.
Oh, that's interesting. Was there any reason given for all that?
Well, I know they've tried draining it in the past because I think there was some talk that it attracted a lot of the birds and wildlife there, and that could be one of the reasons why they did it. And there's a fountain in the other lake now.
Oh, okay. All right, there you go. All right, the 8th race today, optional claimer for state breds. Your thoughts there?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Watch this type of race for it because this could change in the future with Panther coming in. But I think La Verdad, won 2 in a row, has been working out very well for the spot. Yes, the horse hasn't run since May, but Linda Rice definitely has getting ready. This horse has been working out very well, and 2-1 morning line, you might get that because of the layoff. I think La Verdad is much the best versus these.
Well, we're right on the same boat there. I had La Verdad on top. I think that's one of those that could be a very nice horse, certainly in the first 3 career starts, showing a little bit of talent. So I'm going to be excited to see that one on the comeback. And finally, in the finale this afternoon at Aqueduct, race number 9, Plain Vanilla, $20,000 claimer, a mile on the turf.
Wide open race. I think SCOTUS is going to get a lot of money with dropping class for Nevin. But I think Foolish Tiger, you have to respect. This is a horse who ran 3rd last time out at this level, going a mile 16, has 1 race over this course at Aqueduct, did finish 3rd. This is a horse who has won at this level in the past, whether it's yielding turf course, has run well on a good turf course. And yes, the horse is 3'26" on the turf, but I think this is the right level, especially with Lascano riding.
All right, and John, before we let you go, did you take a look at Saturday's Long Island?
I did look at the Long Island. The one thing people have to realize with the Long Island, you need good tactical speed because in the past 9 years I've noticed only one horse came from far back, and that was Salvina in 2007. Everything else was either on the lead, like Star Former last year, or a couple lengths out of it. So that being said, I'm going to look at a horse like Tommy Albertrani's horse, Anjas, who has good tactical speed, ran 2nd in the way, going a mile and a half. Hasn't run since then, but Albertrani definitely knows how to get them ready, and I think that tactical speed would make all the difference in this race.
All right. Yeah, I said it before. It's counterintuitive to a lot of people who are new to the game, but speed is very, very dangerous the longer you go. So these mile-and-a-half races, I'm with you. You want somebody who's either up on the lead, the lone speed, or has the tactical speed to be in touch with some of those front runners. John, appreciate the visit this morning. As always, good luck this afternoon. We'll talk to you next week.
You got it. Take care.
Thanks a lot. John DeSilva from RacingWithBruno.com. We'll take our next break. When we come back, it is Dave Rodman from Laurel Park. As noted last week, he kind of swung and hit a grand slam. We'll talk a little bit about that right after this.
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night school, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night School in the Buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
Each morning on the OTB TV network, you get the very best in horse racing programming. Weekdays begin with the Handicappers Report, where professional handicappers share their selections and analysis of the day's racing. Followed by Racing Across America, a daily conversation with racing personalities from around the country. Saturdays include Down the Stretch, where Mark Casano speaks with the biggest names in racing. And Sunday mornings, it's Loose on the Lead, where Steve Bick and I offer news and a unique lineup of weekly guests. All here on the OTB TV network. The Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back. That's right, the 2013 Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back, and it's your chance to win thousands in cash and prizes and a seat at the 2014 National Handicapping Championship in Las Vegas. This month's contest is Wager Wars. So sign up today online at capitalotb.com or stop in at the Clubhouse Racebook. And don't forget our Showviver series, Capital OTB's online handicapping contest.
We're not worthy! We're not worthy! We're not worthy! We're scum! We suck!
All right, welcome back to Racing Across America. Dave, I don't know whether you could hear that or not, but as we came out of the break, we did a Wayne and Garth tribute to you. We're not worthy. Wayne and Garth doing it. I am now doing it too, bowing to Dave Rodman, because as noted at the top of the show, you swung for the fences and hit a home run last week. As last week, we were saying to all our guests, give us some opinions on the Breeders' Cup. So everybody gave some opinions. Dave Rodman steps up and says, you know, I got something a little earlier on Friday's card, a horse I've been watching. We're going to pick up the stretch run here to last Friday's Santa Anita second race, early on the Breeders' Cup card. It was not a Breeders' Cup race, but who cares? Number 12, Air of Storm, the horse that Dave Rodman handed out like candy on the show last week, gets the job done at 37-1, $77.60. Dave, tell us what keyed you on Air of Storm, and how did you do last Friday?
Well, I'm like you. I didn't think I had a dime on him. I didn't. I gave him to a lot of people there who made a little bit of money on him. I'm just horse that I'd followed for a while. I thought he needed blinkers, and he'd run back a couple of times since I put him on my list to follow. And all of a sudden, he pops up with blinkers on, and so that was the key. And the more I looked at him, I said he's going to be a big price. And Peter Millard obviously doing quite well, a big percentage barn there, and he popped. I mean, I thought he was going to stop as quick as he was going early, but he kept on going.
Yeah, $77, nice call. And our man Brian in the control room picked up a little bit of the double and got something. I walked out last Friday as we turned out the lights and walked out of the studio. I said to Brian and the other guys here, I said, "Don't forget the Rodman horse, Air of Storm." And then I went home, went out and did some shopping, and I came back and I thought, I logged on and the race had already been run. $77. So unfortunately, I missed it, but I immediately emailed you because that was a great call. $77 again.
Yeah, well, you're kind of like me. I got hung up looking at working here at the track and calling races and whatnot, and I thought I just should have done it early in the morning, put a couple of bucks on them. But I did have some friends who hit the superfecta for a dime, and a couple of people had them pretty good. But I guess that'll make up for a bunch of those bad losers at Laurel. Even if we go for 3 today, right?
I'm just looking here as you say that. If your buddy said a superfecta for a dime, that was an $11,000, almost a $12,000 superfecta. So for the dime, they were picking up about $1,200.
Yeah, but you want to hear the rest of the story. By the end of the weekend, they didn't have much of that money left. But you know how that goes.
It was for me. It was a tough Breeders' Cup. On Friday, I did okay. I made a little bit of money, but Saturday, as an exacta guy, I had some horses on top. I was just having some trouble getting things underneath. But speaking of Breeders' Cup, we've been asking everybody all week long, what were your impressions?
Well, it's easy if you're in the game a long time to get kind of jaded a little bit. But I tell you, just watch the Breeders' Cup Classic over and over and over again, and you got to love the game again. It was a fantastic race, great storylines through and through. Gary Stevens, Kathy Ritvo, and good to see a horse like Bucho Macho Man, who, I thought was kind of on the downhill slide, but gave a bit of indication that he was back almost on top form, and he holds off Lucas, the Lucas runner, will take charge. And, of course, it's the European Declaration of War. I think I told you last week that was kind of my pick in the Classic, and he ran lights out, too, and he switched leads, perhaps, in the stretch. Who knows? A lot of things could have gone differently. And that's, to me, the top is the Classic and the stretch run there.
Yeah, you were one of, by the end of the week, 3 people who had mentioned Declaration of War. I could not pull the trigger thinking, the Europeans, certainly when they come over here on grass, you have to pay attention. That was obvious over the weekend as well. But on dirt, I just couldn't. But, boy, he ran great.
I thought he was a winner every step of the way from about the opening quarter when he got him behind horses, and he wasn't tossing his head about or anything with dirt, and he wasn't getting rank, and he was just traveling so sweetly the entire way. But, that's why it's a tough race, and, it couldn't have been any more thrilling finish. A little disappointed, I guess, in Dance to Bristol. on a local scene here from Bowie and Ollie Figgins and Xavier Perez and how she ran. I thought she ran a lot better than that. But I hear kind of unofficially that she's been sold, perhaps as a broodmare.
Okay.
So, maybe we'll see little Dance to Bristol's running around here in a couple of years.
She was certainly very impressive up at Saratoga this season.
Was our local hopeful, and everybody was rooting for her.
Yeah.
And I thought Sweet Lulu would run better in that race too, but she kind of folded. But Groupie Doll, wow, can you say?
Yeah, I mean, speaking of a horse that I thought had lost a step, Groupie Doll. I had Groupie Doll in my mix, but it just looked like she wasn't quite the same Groupie Doll, but certainly came back and performed very well. Similar, a horse I didn't have in my mix was Misdirection, and I've said all week long, I found it hard to believe she could come off long layoffs like that 2 years in a row, but she repeats as well. And those were a couple of the stories that made the weekend for me. You add in the repeat by Wise Dan, and you alluded to it a moment ago, Mike Smith and Gary Stevens, also great stories.
Yeah, the storylines through and through there was a great Breeders' Cup overall. Wish I could have been there. Maybe next year I think I might go, and you never know.
Yeah, and looking out there, it looked like weather-wise a great day, great setting out there at Santa Anita. So I said earlier this week, I think our view of these big events are colored by how we do at the betting window. So about midday on Saturday, I was a little lukewarm, but by the end of the day, all those great stories, I concluded a couple of pretty good days of racing, no doubt about it.
Well,
All right.
we've had so many promising young 2-year-olds here at Laurel Run this year. I'm looking for perhaps one of them to carry on and go on and do some good things and do some damage there next year.
Yeah,
that we've been talking about.
And it's not going to shock me at all if maybe those horses make some noise as 3-year-olds as compared to the horses coming out of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, because we know last year no juveniles came to the Kentucky Derby, and the way they came down the stretch this year, I'm scratching my head. I don't know about the 2-year-olds coming out of the Juvenile this year, so maybe some of those Laurel horses might make some noise as 3-year-olds next year. Let's talk a little bit about Eclipse implications. Coming out of that Classic, does Will Take Charge have the lead on the 3-year-old title?
I would think so. I mean, he's the kind of horse that I remember just watching him physically off and on. He's been off, he's been on, but when he's on, he's a tough character, and I think he would have the edge right now as a 3-year-old.
And it seems pretty much a consensus at this point, and it was validated by the NTRA poll that came out on Monday. Wise Dan is probably going to repeat as Horse of the Year.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt about it. I mean, that was a powerful run, and I've been a big fan of Wise Dan for a long time.
And again, a couple of good days of racing Friday and Saturday out the Breeders' Cup, but still plenty of good racing for the remainder of the year, including Thursday at Laurel Park. We'll see if we can get a couple of $77 winners out to the.
I don't know about that. I think the highest price might be $12 if we get the first one home, maybe.
That works too. But give us a little weather update on Laurel. Up here in upstate New York, it's raining right now. How about you?
It's cloudy, and there's supposed to rain, have some showers here, but I think it's going to be kind of brief and fairly light. And at this point in the year on the turf course, I think we'll stay. Period today, unless something really drastically changes, because we've maybe done the last couple of weeks of turf racing here.
All right,
but I mean, I would just consider it just firm ground.
All right,
not concrete, but firm.
That's what we like to hear. And you're going to kick things off with a turf race today. The third race is a maiden special weight event, and I'm just looking it over. It's one of those races I really like. Nice full field. I think there should be some value here. These are 2-year-old fillies going 1 1/16 on the grass.
Well, I mean, I can give you number 3, Anea from the Dutrow barn. She looks like the filly to beat, but a horse that kind of ran a sneaky good race, even though she finished second last time out, was Mountain Sprite. Because I was kind of impressed with the professionalism going 5.5 as she finished stoutly down on the inside there, like she'd run 2, 3, 4, 5 times like a real pro. The barn looking for the first win of the meet, but she gets Lasix here for the first time and is on the stretch out, and she's out of a damn grand slalom that's produced multiple type winners like Tomeo, Experts Only, Cryptic Skier, Hear Us Roar, For a mare, at her age to keep producing good runners is something it's something to really marvel at. And Mountain Sprite kind of fits the bill here. Is a little bit under the radar. And I don't have the morning line in front of me, so she can't. She's got to be 7-2 or so in that spot, I would think.
Mine's showing 5-2 on Mountain Sprite.
Okay, well, so much for that.
And Ania 3-1. And I'm also looking at one that I think is short odds as well, but I find interesting. The first-time starter by Michael Matz by Tappet. Tappett's Rose looks a little interesting, but only getting 4-1 on that one too.
Well, Matz has popped with the first-time starter this meet. Comme de Choix was the name of the horse on the dirt and a mile, and he's pretty low percentage first out. But this filly is bred to like the turf, obviously. Rosa Killarney was a two-time winner on the turf, and with a best buyer of 86 in the lifetime on the grass. So people may shy away from her thinking, well, Matt's always, the firsters need a run, but maybe not with this filly, given her pedigree. And the fact that he does win with firsters, just not that often, but this kind of horse could be something.
Yeah, it interests me a little bit, but as I say...
But I think Ani's the horse to beat. I mean, off that New York race, so she was kind of even-paced in a sprint there.
All right, we're also...
Maybe those 3, 6, 7.
I hear you. As you were talking, I was thinking and writing exactly that. So we'll see what happens this afternoon in the third. In the fifth today, we're on the grass. Optional claimer, 40 tags, non-winners are one other than the condition. They're on the grass at 1 mile.
Going for the first time in the U.S. here for Dixie Union filly Race Hunter, who comes from Great Britain, Thirsk, Ascot, and Catterick. She is in Graham Motion's farm for the first time and is a half-sister to a horse that liked to go 9 furlongs all the way up to, say, 1.5 miles. And the fact that she won sprinting at 5 furlongs first out would indicate to me that perhaps, given that pedigree, that maybe she's okay here in this spot. So first time here for Graham Motion on Race Hunter, a Kentucky bred who's been racing overseas in the 5th race. And it looks to be a good amount of speed in front of her, perhaps suspect speed in front of her, like a Mighty Swift, the full horse. Jerry Love is an Arkansas bred who has been running on synthetics, but is bred to like the turf. That's the 9 Jerry Love from the Trombetta barn. So, what a mishmash there of interesting notes on number 9 Jerry Love.
Yeah, the Arkansas bred, you don't see those running around too often.
But she's a half to a 7-time turf winner too, Jerry Love. So, I would suspect she's the one to beat if she can settle and relax, perhaps, and stay out of any kind of duel. But I'll go with the 1 in here, Race Hunter.
Yeah, and I will note on your 1, the Daily Racing Form statistics for first-time North America for Graham Motion, 38%. Nice number.
Very strong.
And with a decent sample of 29, so that certainly jumps off, too.
Gets in with a feather today with 118 after carrying 132, 124, 126.
All right, and let's wrap things up with the 6th at Laurel today. Another one of those maiden specials that looks very interesting to me. 2-year-old fillies. This time they're on the main track at a quick 5.5.
Yeah, I like the first-time starter in here, the Richard Santuli's paddleboard from the Alan Goldberg barn. She's out of Wellspring, but the dam of Wellspring, second dam back, was, you probably remember, Chiposa Springs.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, she won 14 races, $762,000. So, Harlan's Holiday filly. We had a Kelly Breen runner here that ran off the screen yesterday. Kind of a similar situation. Outside draw, kind of free of traffic, wouldn't get in any, had good natural speed, and I think perhaps you'll see the same from paddleboard today, unless she's completely sluggish early, and then the rider would have to tuck her in to save some ground, and you never know what's going to happen after that. But I would suspect that she'll be forwardly placed in here. Goldberg, overall, first-time starters for Santulli is a pretty good rate, 14%. But I love that pedigree on the dam side there. Chiposa Springs in the second dam. If you'd see not first dam, obviously, you might get a little more attention at the windows.
And I'm looking 6-1 morning line, so we got a little value there as well. And I'm also
the two Steady and Love is going to get a lot of play. I mean, there's a lot of ways. Of course, called Grazie from Delaware Park has some really good numbers. Very quick early. So I'm hoping that maybe that paddleboard can settle right off of the speed of Grazie and then pound.
And Trombetta has the Candy Ride. I love Candy Ride's first time out. But I'm also noticing your top pick paddleboard has an apprentice jockey on board. And I noted on the Laurel Park website within the last day, there was a nice article. The apprentices making some noise down at Laurel Park.
Yeah, Trevor McCarthy's just doing a bang-up job here at Laurel. Of course, his father was the rider Michael McCarthy, and right from the word get-go, we knew he had kind of a magic touch. He's very tall rider, but he sits well on a horse, and just gets them to kind of relax and let it, doesn't get too fancy on a horse, and as always has them well placed. And I think he's one of his positives is that he's a rider that if a horse has natural speed out of the gate, you never see him get left at the gate. I mean, he's right on them. He knows how to get them right out of the gate and in position early with a horse with natural early speed.
And
you hardly ever see him break to the back of the pack or break sluggishly or have to rush up, or if he does kind of break poorly because of the horse, he doesn't get all fancy and try to make a premature move.
And he was part of a group of 4 that were actually profiled in this article, including a female apprentice, and I linked to that on Equidaily today as well.
Chelsea Kaiser.
Yeah, they're all making a little bit of noise down there.
Chelsea, give you a hint, yesterday's last race was won by a horse named Scrapple for Ann Merriman. And, the percentage is probably a tick higher now, but this year alone, Ann Merriman, Chelsea Kaiser, 26% in the winner's circle together.
Nice.
And as Ann said when she won the last race on Maryland Million Day, she can ride all of my horses as far as I'm concerned because she has a way of getting them to relax. And same thing yesterday, didn't panic in a mile and an eighth race. Of course, the horse was favored but got up in the nick of time. So Chelsea Kaiser and Merriman, a combination to look for. Another apprentice rider that won a race yesterday has a few mounts now for Juan Vasquez barn in the coming days is Cecily Evans, and she's only won a couple of races at the meet, but she began her career here, then ventured out to California where I believe she won her first race, came back to Maryland because she felt she was maybe ready to get established in a few barns here, and she's improving and almost took a 40-1 shot wire to wire yesterday on the turf. So I know that the next few days or weeks you may be watching for her on the high percentage barn of Juan Vasquez.
And of course, we know, and this is going back quite a ways because it includes the McCarrans. Maryland has been a hotbed of apprentices that went on to have very good careers. So we'll keep our eyes on these youngsters as well.
And Victor Carrasco is another rider too. He's got, I don't know how he does it, but because I remember he rode pretty much the whole card at Laurel last week, and I tuned in Charlestown and I checked the entries, and he had probably 5 or 6 mounts at Charlestown. So he's riding day and night on both circuits, Charlestown being about an hour and a half up the road or so. Well, it used to be an hour and 10 minutes with traffic. Now it's a little bit more.
Yeah, we got Franco here in New York, and he's doing the same thing. They make the most of that bug while I have it. On the off days, he's always riding someplace out of town, so you can understand it.
I think he had a horse maybe, I know one of his mounts was scratchier last week, but he's even attempted to come to venture down to Maryland as well.
Yeah, when they got that allowance, they make the most of it. Dave, we certainly appreciate the visit this morning. As always, as we understand, you're tied up for the next couple of weeks, so we'll catch up with you down the road. But again, I am once again bowing. We are not worthy, as you handed out the nice $77 winner last week. We appreciate that, and we'll catch up with you down the road.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm going underground next week. So, if we give a few losers this week or today at Laurel, that people will forget about it.
All right. Dave, thanks a lot.
Okay.
Dave Rodman from Laurel Park. A little earlier, John DeSilva from RacingWithBruno.com. That wraps things up for Racing Across America for this Thursday. We'll be back tomorrow, Friday at 10 a.m. with more Racing Across America. Again, a little more Breeders' Cup conversation as we wrap up this recap week. We'll also look forward to some of the stakes action on the weekend tomorrow. 9 o'clock every day is the Handicappers Report. Tune in for that as well. Good luck at the races this afternoon, and we'll see you tomorrow.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.